Controversy, tragedy, mayhem. It has begun. I was hoping it wouldn't happen, but it's begun. UFC personalities and fighters and former fighters hating on boxing ever since Dana White got into boxing. In this video, I'm going to break it down like no one else. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Now, this clip comes from Brendan Schaub, and as you guys know, Canelo fought Crawford. Crawford destroyed him. I've already made breakdowns about the fight. Excellent masterclass stuff from Terence Crawford. They had a UFC No Chase fight on the same night, and Brendan Schaub, a former UFC fighter and now podcaster and comedian or whatever, had some things to say. So I want to start off with what he had to say, and then I'll be back with my rebuttal. Roll the clip.
If you took two casuals and you showed them Lopez and Silva, Diego Lopez and Silva, you show them that fight, and you show them Canelo Crawford, and you say, which one did you have more fun watching? Mm-hmm. There's probably not a person on earth that would choose Crawford Canelo. You wouldn't. You wouldn't. It just is what it is.
My buddy literally texted me. He goes, dude, this is a boring ass fight. He's a casual though.
Yep.
Yeah.
In the words of DMX, here we go again. Same old dog, is a different day. So the premise is Brendan Schaub is saying that if you had a casual fan and you showed them Canelo Crawford versus UFC Noche main event with Lopez and Jean Silva, that nobody would pick boxing as the better fight, right? Which is entirely cap, because I personally know people who they don't even watch UFC and they like boxing. So it's funny when people make generalized statements and then act like it is the truth and like an undisputed truth, right? It's similar to when people lie and then they say facts. Just because you say facts at the end of it don't mean that it's you telling the truth, right? So this is the personal opinion of Brendan Schaub, but we don't know you for boxing, so why do we care what you're saying? And I want to expose these fallacies that continue to go on in the world of boxing. And now, like, I understood it for different reasons, but now I really see why some people didn't even want Dana White involved in boxing. Because now that a UFC personality is in boxing, he's bringing in people who never opine about boxing and are UFC MMA fans, and because Dana White's involved, now they want to check it out, and now they got opinions on boxing. And we already know how that's going to go. They're going to be like, our sport is better and blah, blah, blah. I don't have anything against MMA. I watch it occasionally. Boxing, there's no other sport like it. Boxing is the hardest sport. Even Luke Rockhold just said that, right? They said bare knuckle, UFC and MMA and kickboxing and boxing, what's the hardest? He said boxing. Boxing is the hardest sport in the world because, like, I'm not saying UFC is easy, but boxing, you have this and you have these, and you got to get it done. The only thing you use your feet for is positioning, lateral movement, and whatnot. That when your tools are more limited, automatically it becomes harder, because I've seen tons of UFC fights where a guy's a good fighter, but he can't get past one thing. So as a result, because his wrestling is not up to par, and that's what you're seeing in the UFC right now, right? You're seeing a lot of these guys from like Russia, Dagestan, like DDP. He couldn't do nothing with Chimaev, right? He just couldn't. and that wasn't a fun fight. So it's like you got people like Brendan Schaub, and they're like, oh, put Canelo versus Diego Lopez, Jean Silva, blah, blah, blah. But what about DDP? That was a main event, Duplessis versus Chimaev or whatever, and that was a boring fight. So what are you even talking about? The other thing is, you said if you ask a casual, why is the barometer casual fans? Who cares what a casual has to say? Because if you're a casual, that's why you're a casual, because you're not deep enough and detailed enough to really know about either sport. So the statement to me was dumb from Brendan Schaub. You're talking about if you ask any casual what fight if that's the case, a casual would rather see a World Star fight than a UFC fight. Two random crackheads, somebody picks a bottle up and they're throwing and swinging wild. So, you could do that. Or if somebody is a casual baseball fan and they have home run derby, they would rather watch home run derby, which is pure excitement, than 8 innings of a baseball game. You see how dumb that sounds? Or that's like All-Star Week versus an actual game. An actual game requires strategy, technique. There's, a break in between and a halftime, football, basketball, versus flag football or something. You know what I mean? So you could really do that with anything. And the other thing is these newfound UFC people that now have an opinion because Dana White's in the sport. It's funny because Terence Crawford and Canelo combined for 44 million views. There's no UFC fight that has even done that. So while UFC fighters hate on boxing, they still can't touch boxing. Paycheck wise, we know they're not getting paid more. Even the win bonus for the undercard, which happened to be Mbili and Lester Martinez, they got $100K win bonus for having a fun fight. The UFC, they're getting $50K bonus. So you can say whatever you want. Oh, Diego Lopez and Silva and casuals rather watch the fight. 44 million people watch Canelo Crawford. Crawford did the dang thing. And of course, especially if we're talking about casuals, a lot of the casuals, they might like Canelo. So of course they're going to now say, because a black fighter won, they're going to say that Terence Crawford was boring and it was slow paced because Canelo couldn't figure him out. Just the same people hated on Maypac and said, oh, the fight was so boring. I enjoyed Mayweather-Pacquiao. I picked Floyd and I was happy he won, but I said may the best man win, and I just happened to be right? I'm happy that Bud won because Bud eliminated Canelo holding the belts hostage. So him freeing it up ends the curse from Canelo, where Canelo's just been a champion whilst not having to fight David Benavidez, for example. So the fight was only boring to people who A, don't know boxing and don't care to learn, or B, you're probably a Canelo fan and you feel a type of way. I told you, I didn't make a prediction for Canelo Crawford officially, and I didn't care who win. I said, may the best man win. Crawford, to me, it was exciting. The way he was letting his hands go, he was a smaller man, so there was a lot of nuance. Crawford is one of the best catch and shoot boxers that are active fighters, probably the best in the game right now. He was countering, he was catching stuff and then countering. He was hitting Canelo with the same hand twice, back to back. That is very hard to do. He had a double rear left. He said bow, and then he clipped him with a hook with the same hand right back to back. So anybody who doesn't know boxing, of course they're not going to appreciate that. They want to see carnage and whatever. And the fight with Diego Lopez, that was cool, but who cares? It was a round 2. The other reason why that could never compare to boxing is because Crawford was up against everything. Weight, Canelo's fans, everything, he made less money. Everything negative was on Crawford's side. So that's a classic David versus Goliath type of scenario. Canelo had all the fans, all the money, all the accolade, blah, blah, blah. He was the bigger guy. So that in and of itself, that storyline, versus when you're looking at Diego Lopez, he did his thing, but his opponent was like 16-3, and he wasn't on the level of a Lopez. So of course the fight is going to look like that. If you put Crawford, if you want mindless action, you could have put Crawford in there with someone not named Canelo, like David Avocado, and then it would have been more carnage and brain spilling and all that other stuff. Because if he's doing that to an elite fighter, imagine how bad he would cut up somebody who is a Jean Silva level equivalent in boxing, if you understand what I mean. So yeah, we're tired of UFC, MMA podcasters and fighters talking about it. This is why people didn't want Dana White in the sport of boxing. I don't know why Turkey used him, Dana White, to bring and usher in boxing. We don't care about no MMA person's opinion that ain't respectful to boxing because you want to uplift your sport. Our fighters get paid more, facts. Our fights are generating bigger events, bigger live gates. The live gate, there's no UFC fight that's doing the live gate that boxing fight did. So it's showing you boxing's on top. Canelo had to check Max Kellerman when he started saying like, oh, boxing's falling off and not as big. And UFC, bro, UFC don't have no stars. They don't have no stars right now. And I'm talking about back when they had Chuck Liddell, Rampage, and Rashad, and Nick and Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor, Ronda Rousey. They don't got stars like that right now, right? They don't. Sean O'Malley lost, and then he lost again in the rematch. You got Stylebender lost, then the kid lost again. What are we talking about? So I'm sick of like UFC fighters coming out with opinion. You got Ilia Topuria calling out Crawford, saying he'll knock him out. Why aren't you worried about people in your own sport and you're worried about Crawford? So it just shows you we're getting a lot of hate, but there's nothing better than boxing, because Crawford, he's like, I barely even know who Ilia Topuria is. When he came up to me, I don't even know who he is. You know what I mean? I didn't really know much about him. I ain't really seen his fights like that. But everybody in the UFC is talking about us. But I don't want to make this like UFC versus boxing, but they're making it like that with nonsensical comments talking about, oh, everybody would rather watch Diego Lopez. Again, boxing is capable of a lot of those types of fights where it's like you'll see boxers are better strikers than any striker in the UFC, for sure. Anybody with boxing hands got better hands than anybody in the UFC, right? So they become more dangerous when it comes to knockouts and punches, right? They can fight a high-level person and knock out, like Artur Beterbiev can fight an Olympian like Marcus Brown and knock him out. He can fight guys that are bigger and big punchers like Joe Smith and knock him out because he's a certified ILA when it comes to hands. He got hands. You don't have to worry about getting elbowed and knees and kicks and chokeholds and stuff like that. He's studying. It's like Bruce Lee, the Bruce Lee quote: "Fear not the man who practices 10,000 kicks once. Fear the man who practices one kick 10,000 times." Boxers, they're practicing primarily, the only weapon that a boxer can use is this. You can't use your legs to like knee somebody. You can't kick them. You can't elbow them. Can't headbutt. You know what I mean? So it makes them more dangerous. And again, when we're talking about it, you've seen the highest level of boxing in terms of two elite guys. One was bigger in Canelo. If you wanted pure action, if Bud took some tune-ups, he probably would have stopped Canelo. That's the reality. If Bud was, naturally bigger, he would have cooked Canelo, because he almost cooked him and almost stopped him as is with no tune-ups, long layoff, etc. So just give Bud his props and stop with the nonsense of UFC versus boxing, because if we're really going to be serious, there's no dispute. No fighter in UFC history has made more money than Floyd Mayweather. No fighter in UFC history has made more money than Canelo Alvarez. No fighter in UFC history is making more than guys like Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua made, and Wilder and Gervonta Davis. You know, take like 5 boxers like Crawford. He's making some very good money. Canelo, Gervonta, and Pacquiao's and Floyd's, and then put it against any 5 UFC fighters, and the pay scale is crazy. So somebody's paying for it. Jake Paul making more money than Jake Paul is on the Forbes list. Why isn't Diego Lopez on the Forbes list? You know what I mean? Come on, bro. Boxing is it. Boxing is that deal. And that's just something you got to deal with.